The continued support in our fight against COVID-19 will cost $8 billion. It is a difficult journey ahead, but you will not walk alone.
Deputy Prime Minister Heng Keat there announcing more support measures for workers and businesses today.
We'll get reaction from the Straits Times Associate Editor Vikram Khanna and Robert Yap, President of the Singapore National Employers Federation.
Well, good evening. You're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay.
And I'm Haryanto Diman. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. Since the start of the COVID-19 crisis, the government has committed almost $100 million over 4 budgets to support Singapore's economy.
This afternoon, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Heng Keat announced that $8 billion more will be spent to save jobs and create new ones.
Together, we must continue to adapt to the rapidly changing situation. We designed our measures to give us flexibility for adjustments as the crisis progresses. Some of these measures are ending soon. It is therefore timely for us to advance our strategies in 3 areas. First, we'll continue to support jobs and create new ones. Second, we'll provide further support for sectors which are hit the hardest. Third, we must position ourselves to seize growth opportunities in a post-COVID world.
Let's take a closer look at what Mr. Heng announced this afternoon. First, the Jobs Support Scheme will be extended for 7 months from now up to March 2021. JSS will continue to support up to 50% of wage levels, but it will be adjusted for different sectors based on their projected recovery.
Next, the government is launching the Jobs Growth Incentive with a special focus on mature workers. The $1 billion program encourages firms to increase their headcount over the next 6 months. For each new local hire, the government will provide a wage subsidy for 12 months of up to 25% for those below 40 years old and up to 50% for those aged 40 and above.
For unemployed and low-wage workers, the COVID-19 support grant introduced in May will be extended until this December. And the Workfare Special Payment will include those who are on the Workfare Income Supplement Scheme this year.
And the government plans further support for 3 sectors in particular: aerospace, aviation and tourism, to preserve their core capabilities. An additional $187 million will be allocated to provide cost relief and support to regain Singapore's air connectivity to the world. In addition, a temporary redeployment program will be scaled up for workers in the aviation sector, and $320 million will be set aside to boost domestic tourism through tourism credits called Singapore Rediscovers vouchers.
And finally, to transform the economy for the post-COVID-19 world, the government will inject up to $150 million to enhance the Startup SG Founder Program. We're now joined by the Straits Times Associate Editor Vikram Khanna to help break down the details. Vikram, for a start, what stood out the most for you in DPM Heng's ministerial statement today?
I think there are 3 things that are particularly noteworthy. One is the extension of the job support scheme, as well as its more careful targeting and focusing so that different sectors get different levels of support. The other thing is the new jobs growth incentives, provides wage subsidies to enable employers to hire more workers, with higher subsidies being given to hire older workers. And the third is the extension of the COVID support grant to help the unemployed till the end of the year. So I think these are the 3 big things. I mean, there are also some other things such as special support for the worst affected sectors like aviation, so on, and help for the startup. But I think these were the 3 main takeaways for me.
Right. Well, Vikram, let's take a closer look at the changes to the job support scheme, which you say is now more targeted, more focused. While it's extended for another 7 months, the support provided will vary according to the sectors. Firms in the aerospace, aviation and tourism sectors that have been the hardest hit will receive 50% wage support until March next year.
The built environment sector will get 50% wage support for 2 more months before the support is lowered to 30%. The arts and entertainment, food services, land transport, marine and offshore, as well as the retail sectors will receive 30% wage support also for 7 more months.
And the large majority of the remaining sectors will get 10% support for the 7 months. The few sectors that are managing well, including biomedical sciences, financial services and ICT, will receive 10% support until December this year. So Vikram, the question is, what do you make of this targeted, focused approach to the JSS? Will the revised support be enough for the firms to continue getting back on their feet and avoid any retrenchment, hopefully, of workers or even the risk of shutting?
Okay, now the targeted approach makes sense because I think the impact of COVID-19 has been very variable across sectors. There are some sectors that are doing all right, for example, finance, for example, the biomed sector. A few sectors are doing even better during COVID than before COVID, such as the e-commerce sector. The biomed is another case. Whereas many sectors are struggling. So it would be wasteful and unfair to give equal type of support across the board. So you do have to differentiate. But that said, I mean, there are still issues. I mean, I think we have to be realistic. The government has said that it cannot save every firm, it cannot save every job. And even within sectors, there are different companies that are differently positioned. So for example, in retail, you have mom and pop shops on the one end, then you have the big department stores on the other side, and you have the supermarkets, the supermarkets, which are doing very well, whereas the mom and pops could be struggling. So it's the same sector, but different companies are doing differently. Or you look at the restaurants. I mean, you have small family-run restaurants on the one side and hawkers, and then you have the big chains, which are also part of the restaurant sector. So they are differently positioned. They may be differently leveraged. They may have different staying power. So not all companies in every sector are doing the same, but they're going to get the similar levels of support. So I think there could be issues for some companies in different sectors. The same is true of hotels and the whole hospitality sector. The big hotels are able to provide staycations, right? But the backpacker hostels are not able to do that. So you have a differential situation within the sector. So I think there will be some companies that will have problems, even despite this support. It will help, but it is not going to solve everybody's problems. There will still be layoffs, even in the sectors that are being helped.
All right. Now, there were other support measures that were announced in the previous budget statements, like the foreign worker levy waivers and the financial assistance for the self-employed or the SIRS. Now, these schemes, they are ending soon, but DPM Heng did not make any mention of them today. Do we take that these measures then will not be extended?
Well, that is not clear, but let me just say that for the foreign workers levy, I mean, the dormitories have now been cleared of COVID-19. The foreign workers are coming back. So there's no reason really to keep extending the waivers or the rebates on the foreign worker levies. So that's one thing. As for the SIRS, the self-employed relief scheme, the next payment goes out in October. I mean, so there's still some time. I mean, it's not clear whether it'll be renewed after that, extended after that or not, but it hasn't expired yet.
Right. Well, Vikram, DPM Heng revealed that this round of continued support will cost $8 billion. The funding will come from the reallocation of monies from other areas like development expenditures that were delayed due to the pandemic instead of drawing on past reserves. So the fact that we're not tapping these past reserves like the previous 4 budgets, does that signify anything? Does it mean anything?
Well, it seems the prudent way to go about it. I mean, tapping on past reserves should not be the first option. It should be the last. So I think what the government has decided to do is take money from areas where it's not being used, like development projects which have been held up because of COVID, and deploy it for this assistance. Now, of course, those development projects will eventually have to get done. But by the time that happens, hopefully these measures will be tapered off. So you will not have to have this expenditure that we now have. And we will have money freed up for those development projects. But that's the prudent thing to do. You don't want to go to reserves as a first resort.
Yeah. Well, great points there, Vikram. And as always, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Always a pleasure to speak with you. We were speaking to Associate Editor at the Straits Times, Vikram Khanna.
Well, DPM Heng also announced the new jobs growth incentive. One of the things that stood out for Vikram, if you recall, now it's a $1 billion program that will support firms to increase their headcount of local workers over the next 6 months.
There are bright spots amidst the severe economic situation. Our biomedical sciences, financial services, and ICT sectors continue to need more workers. The public healthcare and long-term care sectors are hiring. Some firms in the F&B and manufacturing sectors are growing and innovating. To support hiring in these growing sectors, we will launch the Jobs Growth Initiative, or JGI. The JGI supports the government's efforts to create new jobs for our workers, with a special focus on our mature workers.
For these firms, the government will co-pay up to 25% of salaries of all new local hires for 1 year, subject to a cap. For those 40 years old and above, the co-payment to firms will be up to 50%.
We're pleased to welcome Mr. Robert Yap to the show. He's the president of the Singapore National Employers Federation. So Robert, let's first talk about the new jobs growth incentive. Do you think this will change the hiring criteria in growing sectors like biomedical sciences and financial services? And how much of an incentive will this bode for companies to hire older or mid-career workers?
Yeah, I think this is actually a very good initiative to encourage companies to actually continue hiring or be more aggressive in hiring. But at the same time, I think companies would also look at what's available in terms of the market forces, the kind of talent that it actually takes. So the incentives, right, in a way that quick towards the older workers, I think is a good thing. But more importantly, I think is the training, right, that needs to get into it. Because if the people or the employees are already well trained, at the same time they happen to be older employees, I don't think any employer will mind. But when they are not trained enough and they are belonging to the older workers, that could pose quite a problem, a challenge for companies. So I think it is important. Then on our basis, in fact, in the tripartite movement, we're trying to ensure that we can actually gear and also skill and reskill workers that are ready for this kind of jobs that become available, right? Not only now, but also as we go, as we go on from here.
Now let's talk about the Jobs Support Scheme, or the JSS, Robert. Some changes have been made to the JSS. How do you think employers will react, especially those whose wage support will drop to 10% come September?
Yeah, I think employers expect this. I think it's good that we are getting this continuation of the JSS. A bit the fact that I think certain sectors that are doing better than others. So I think you have a graduate skill, a different kind of a support as you move on. I think that is expected. And I think the businesses will welcome that. It's just that which sector and who are the sectors that are going to be the one that is getting the maximum, which are the sectors that are getting the minimum. I think these are the kind of things that they will create a little bit of a confusion in the beginning, but I think there are very objective methods of looking at which sector is doing well. The JSS is actually a process to keep jobs, right? To actually allow companies to be able to sustain and tide over this difficult time. But not all companies can tide over this difficult time. And also, we do not know how long this COVID-19 situation will persist. Right? In terms of, is there going to be a second wave, and what happens if there's a second wave? I think these are issues that companies are always tampering with. They are afraid, so a lot of them may take the easy way out and try to actually let go of workers faster. But the JSS will actually help, right? It will definitely help to slow that down so that companies do not become trigger free to let go of their workers. Because when the upturn comes, right, you will need the workers anyway. Right, so it's just that many of us, we are not sure when the upturn is going to happen. So the kind of support will help us to cushion that. Plus, there are a lot of other schemes, right, to actually train, retrain, or reskill your workers while we are waiting for the upturn to come so that they can be more relevant. I think I would urge more companies to look at that rather than just on the JSS, just a belonging, but also on how to retrain, reskill. And there are many schemes there, right, for companies to take advantage of that and reskill workers to be ready for that ultimate upturn.
Robert, from when the JSS was first announced a few months ago, the companies in your federation, do you see them actually taking advantage of the JSS? I mean, to the best way. Like, do you see them using the JSS in order to not lay off workers, as you mentioned earlier?
Yes, I think definitely. I think most companies have found the JSS a very good initiative by the government. I think you see, if there was no JS support, I think the unemployment situation would be very much worse. Companies will not be able to sustain this kind of keeping jobs, right? So while all of us are doing all the other things to keep costs low, to make sure that we are leaner and we are actually more efficient as a company, but at the same time, these are actually beyond the control of many companies. So a JS support is actually a very good initiative, and it has helped companies to actually maintain, right, shoring up their employment to ensure that the workers remain employed.
Right. Robert, DPM Heng also announced today that he will allocate an additional $187 million to extend the enhanced aviation support package. Your federation is also in the midst of firming up details for a scheme targeted to help workers in the retail and aerospace industries. What are your thoughts on that? Can these measures save the aviation sector at least until March 2021?
Yeah, aviation actually is really in the brunt of this kind of a situation. In this sector, I think all the help is needed. Otherwise, I think it's going to be very difficult. But also in other sectors that we are championing, for example, in the aerospace, in the retail sector, right? We are also pushing very hard to actually look at how the government can be more targeted in helping the sector in the way that we are looking at creating, right, an ecosystem, a national unified system to actually make the sector more lean and more agile and ready for the upturn. I think these are all the direct initiatives which we will hear in the next couple of weeks. And I believe together with that kind of a targeted approach at what DPM is trying to do also for the aviation, I think that is the way forward, right? Because ultimately we have all these broad incentives, right? It goes to everyone. But I think a lot of it lack the targeting that we need to look at different sectors, because different sectors have different problems, different opportunities, right? So different kind of a future. At the same time, how do we keep talent, right? So that we don't lose those skills within that sector itself. It's unique to each and different sector. So I think we need to also look at how we can then keep the skills or make them even more relevant by reskilling, by upskilling, so that these people in that sector do not actually lose, right, all their domain, right, in a very short time. So that's what we want to do in trying to actually help that. I believe it is a very good initiative. I think it should be taken to actually look at even more sectors.
Right. Well, Robert, we've talked about the job support scheme, the jobs growth incentive, and of course, just now, the enhanced aviation support package. So broadly speaking, do you think today's announcement met expectations of employers?
Of course, we can always hope for more. This is a situation that all of us is unprecedented. Right? Nobody predict this. Nobody is also well prepared for this. So I think we just have to make use of whatever incentives, whatever support there is, right, from the government and from even other sectors to see how we can actually sustain, right, as a nation and also tide over this difficult time. The difficult part is really guessing when the upturn will happen. But I think we just have to do our part. It is still better than not doing anything, right? Preparing our workforce to be future ready, to take it through into our transformation journey, which we have been pushing for the last couple of years.
Right. Well, a great point made there, Robert. Thank you so much for your time today. We've been speaking to Mr. Robert Yap, who's president of the Singapore National Employers Federation.
Meanwhile, President Halimah Yacob said the extension of the job support scheme will hopefully help Singapore avoid a sudden spike in retrenchments. But she cautioned that not every business can be saved, and we have to be prepared that there may still be more job losses in the next few months.
She also said in the Facebook post that DPM Heng had briefed her on the government's proposal to introduce a fifth support package as significant uncertainties and challenges remain ahead.
Moving on to the COVID-19 situation here, 91 new cases were confirmed today with 0 community cases.
Today's count, though, includes 6 imported cases who had been placed on stay-home notice upon arrival in Singapore. More details will be shared later tonight.
In other local news, from this Thursday, pilots and cabin crew working for Singapore carriers such as Singapore Airlines, Silk Air, Scoot and Jetstar Asia will be routinely tested for COVID-19 upon their return from overseas. This as part of a step-up precaution to guard against the spread of the virus in the community. Aircrew of these 4 carriers returning from regions like mainland China and South Korea, where travellers there are allowed to serve their stay-home notices at their own accommodation, will be exempted from COVID-19 testing.
Next year's school term for all Education Ministry primary and secondary schools will start on January 4th and end on November 19th. These are the details of the school holidays. As before, there will be 4 vacation periods for schools, junior colleges and Millennia Institute. There'll also be 10 public holidays and 4 additional scheduled school holidays: Youth Day on July 4th, the day after National Day, Teachers' Day on September 3rd and Children's Day on October 8th. More information is available on MOE's website.
All Singapore Civil Defence Force frontliners will be equipped with a smartwatch by 2022, which can track their heart rates, location and send man-down alerts. The smartwatch is one of several new technology initiatives unveiled by the force last week. Quantitative data will be collected from the smartwatch trial, ongoing since mid-July, and will be used to help the SCDF team analyse and optimise their training performances. Meanwhile, the first designated smart fire station, a Punggol fire station, is expected to be completed next year and will incorporate the use of more technology in everyday operations.
Good evening, Dylan Ang here with the global headlines. A mutated strain of the coronavirus believed to be more infectious than the original variant that causes COVID-19 has been detected in the Philippines. According to the Philippine Genome Center, the G614 strain, along with the original D614 genotype, was detected in a small sample of positive cases from Quezon City. The mutated strain has also been detected in Malaysia, with authorities there claiming that it is 10 times more infectious. But experts in Singapore say there's no basis for Malaysia's claim, adding that the strain is already found in Singapore. The strain will also have zero impact on vaccine development. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern postponed the general election by 4 weeks to October 17th, as the country reported a further 9 coronavirus infections today. Ms. Ardern said the decision was made after consultation with other political parties and hope it will provide certainty to voters. Meanwhile, Australia recorded its biggest one-day rise in COVID-19 deaths today, with Victoria recording 25 deaths in the past 24 hours, 4 more than the previous record on August 12. New infections at the country's epicentre held steady, with 282 cases, well below the peak of more than 700 a day earlier this month. Over in Spain, hundreds gathered and rallied in Madrid against the mandatory use of face masks and other restrictions imposed by the government to curb new coronavirus infections. Protesters were seen with signs that included "the virus does not exist," "masks kill," and "we are not afraid." Britain urged higher risk groups to sign up for COVID-19 vaccine trials to boost efforts in finding a working vaccine. Over 100,000 have volunteered, but the government said it was particularly keen for individuals over 65 years old, frontline health and care workers, as well as people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds to sign up. And those are the headlines around the world. It's back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks so much, Dylan. Well, those are our top stories for today. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and videos. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.